Okay, let me just say that I rode in '87. We were involved in a crash, and it was so emotionally such a deal because we're
Yeah.
at one point we were the first three laps we had come from 26 and we're in the top five, and then he decides to drift back, and I think it was like Dodd's house and some other that crossed wheels, and we're part of like a 7-8 team crash. So hard to catch us, and especially in the '80s when the teams were so fast, the mid '80s and the early '90s.
It was a giant pace line back in those days.
Yeah, we could not catch that lap back to save ourselves.
Yeah, would have been impossible back in those days,
Yeah,
actually.
at one point when I came in, I had a third of a lead lap going for an exchange. One of the cutters, Vince Hazer, chases me out to use me as a breakaway,
Yep.
and and my pit just didn't have the moxie to insist that they should have their place in queue, and they waved me off, and I was just like, "Are you kidding me?"
Now you're in no man's land, right?
So how does this happen? So and two different races. So tell me, you had a girls team and a guys team that same year, was it? Or did I get this story correct?
No, it was the back-to-back days. So,
Oh, back to back days.
Yeah, Friday was the women's race,
Right.
and we got into a wreck on lap 12 with Caitlin Camplain and with Theta Phi Alpha, and we were basically a lap and a half down. Emily Ducey got on the bike and caught us back up to put us a lap down, which was amazing. And then we had to figure out a plan to make up a lap, and there's only one way to do it, and it's something that I don't know. It's just it's we call it set inversion, where the philosophy is that when you get on the bike, your normal set is you're drafting, you're conserving as much energy as possible, but you use all of your energy getting off the bike on the burn. So you sit, and everything's about the burn, right? Because you it is you are not allowed to exchange the bike and not be off the front. I will send you around again, and everyone knows that with me. So if you think you're going to come in trailing the field, you're probably going to end up going around again. And so that's enough motivation. So again, you sit, and then you go. Well, when you're down a lap, it's completely backwards. When you're down a lap, you have to get on the bike and immediately, if you're here, here's the pack, and you're here, you immediately need to throttle back and then go and create separation immediately. Not 2 laps after you're into it, not 5 laps after you're into it. Get on the bike, throttle back, and go to create as much separation when you have energy as possible. And then you just gotta, once you get a gap, you just have to run it. And we did that twice. We actually made up a lap and a half in the men's
And
race with
what were the intervals that you were doing to catch that lap? Literally a
just
burn lap, one burn lap.
no, no. I mean, they would go and then they would just stay on the bike as long as you time it. It's almost like I hearken it to the old sub movies where you're timing like the missile impacts. You're timing the gap, and as soon as it starts to come down, they get off the bike. Okay,
That's cool. Yeah.
because it's all about time. So hey, how much? What's the gap? What's the gap? What's the gap? What's the gap? You're using references on the track. It's 8 seconds. It's eight. It's eight. It's eight. It's eight. It's seven. It's seven. It's six and a half. Get them off the bike, right? Put someone new on. It's just going to grow. It's 12. It's 12. It's 12. It's 12. It's 13. It's 13. It's 14. It's 14. It's 15. It's 15. It's 16. Keep them on. But the second it starts to go even down two, get them off the bike.
And
You
now they're
know.
exhausted. So now how do they handle the agility of the exchange
The
coming in?
girls, God love my Theta Phi Alpha girls, damn near crashed the bike in the pit every time because we did all bike to bike exchanges. So they knew if they literally just crashed the bike in the pit, there was no slowdown. So I had four very dirty, very bloodied girls, but it was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. And it took them 55 laps in the wind to make that lap back.
Wow.
55 laps. The guys, on the other hand, made up their lap and a half in 12 laps. So
How
both
did that happen? What
remarkable.
was the difference in the guys' approach? Or did you use the same
Yes,
basic approach? They just did it faster.
timing, I think, on the guys. The girls' race really never really slowed down. The guys caught, we were very subtle about the fact that what we were trying to do, and we timed it to where the field wasn't completely hammering, you know. And so there was a lull where the average lap time was about 39 seconds, and we just took advantage of it.
Or so you're
And they were
literally
like,
watching the lap times is when you're going to make your move.
we time every single lap off the front. Every lap we time. So you're in our pit. How fast was that lap? Every lap for 200 laps. How fast was that lap? 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 That's one person's job.
Now, we were talking off camera how you borrowed a couple lessons from Sam Bell from track coaching.
Yeah.
So you've already discussed it a little bit, but amplify it further.
Just like, our training basically was interval based. That came from IU track. But then how we competed, I was a miler, and I was a miler that had a very good kick. I mean, especially in high school, I was a kicker, and so you sit, you never stick your nose in the wind. Never. It just never made sense to me because I'm coming from a track background and watching Acacia, that I thought had some of the best teams in the history of Little Five, and they never won. And they never won because they were always on the front of the race, just in the wind all day. And then, some team that didn't stick their nose in the wind ended up winning at the end. And so that was my philosophy. It's like, you never, ever stick your nose in the wind. And the first team that I had with Major Taylor, we finished second. We lost by a wheel length, and basically told them, hey, look, we're about the 10th or 12th best team in this field. And we will, if you stick your nose in the wind once, we will never have a snowball's chance in hell of winning.
No, you gave. I think I heard you give an efficiency rating in Jim Kirkham's interview that equated to about 30%. 30%. I had no idea it was that high.
Especially in the Little Five, because you're on a single speed bike and you're drafting with 30 teams.
Why, because it's a single speed bike.
Yeah, you're single speed bike, and you're drafting around 30 teams. So it's like, look, here's the deal. We're probably the 10th or 12th best team. That's the bad news. The good news is there's not a team here that's 30% better than we are. And we've got a guy that has one really fast lap in him. And if that's lap 200, we got a shot at winning. So now we have to figure out how to get to lap 200. And the way to do that is when this giant, from your days, it was a giant pace line, flick the elbow, another guy comes through, goes as hard as he can, flick the elbow. Well, the thing never slows down. Right. We get into a race like that, we're screwed. We're 4 laps down with 100 laps. So when we get in that giant pace line and that elbow flick comes and it's our turn to pull, we slow the whole field down.
And how did that happen? I heard that Jim had told me that the track is a little different. It's not quite as high quality track because they don't use some of the additives, the artificial additives to make the track roll faster. That's a factor. And what else happened?
I think it's I think this philosophy, Little Five is like the stock market, right? The whole thing's based on confidence, right? If you degrade the confidence in the field that the next guy up's going to pull as hard as he can, and all of a sudden it's like, well, why am I pulling as hard as I can if he's not pulling as hard as he can? And he's not pulling as hard as he can. Major Taylor's going to get to the front, and they're going to slow the whole damn field down. And so that first year, we literally had people sprinting to our pit, yelling at us like, what the hell are you guys doing? You're slowing the race down. And we're like, yeah, that's the only way we can win. You're yelling at us at lap 125, but guess what? We're still here. We're still with the lead group because every time we get to the front, we slow the field down. And now after a while, you just see it. People are like, well, why am I sprinting? Why am I pulling the field along when every other guy now or every third guy is slowing the race down?
So it becomes like the Valendrome races where, Yep.
And so it's chess. And it's funny you mentioned that because, that's how we hearken. It is chess on bikes. And every guy in there is a different chess piece and every rider has a different role. Some guys' roles are to sprint. Some guys' roles are to catch up. Some guys' roles are to keep their place. Some guys' roles are to just chew up as many laps as they can. But everyone on those teams has a different role.
It sounds like you were very astute at identifying the chess pieces. Do you have any other creative things, race pacing, some of the interval things, any other creative things that you did during your tenure that you think made a difference in terms of your approach to the
Well,
race?
yeah, I'll say this one. Historically speaking, the pit in turn two, everyone always said is the worst pit you could possibly have because when you come into that pit, you have to swing so far to the right, and there's no, the angle's way too steep, and you'll most of the time you're going to crash in that pit. So it's by far the worst pit. Well, when we qualified 32nd in 2018, we're like, hey, that pit is, we can go a couple rows up, but why not just get the one on the end and let's figure out how to maneuver it differently. And we, in my opinion now, after being in that, it's the fastest pit on the track, bar none. The corner pits in turn two and turn four, it's impossible to be any faster than those pits can be. Impossible. But no one really sees it that way. But you have to negotiate the exchange completely differently. So instead of coming around on the right side and bringing the bike around where because that angle is just too wide. You can't go that wide in that turn. You have to either slow down significantly so you won't crash, or if you come in at any speed, you're going to wipe out because the angle's too steep, right? But instead, if you do a bike to bike exchange, and instead of skidding next to or behind the bike or on the right side of the bike, you skid on the left side of the bike right across the front tire. It's the fastest exchange you'll ever see. And then you have 100 meters of straight run up to build up to speed. It's impossible to be any faster.
I'm sure you've got some great stories of people that got energized with biking, kids that you were able to bring into IU that we're grateful that you were around to get them excited about cycling. Maybe share a couple, one or two of those stories where you think you had an impact, because I think that's why you did it. You had what, a 20-year run with it or something like that?
Yeah, at a 20-year run. And then, I think, getting kids to understand that, I had a team with Major Taylor after, we had a little lull in 2006. 2007, I had come back with a whole new group of guys that had never raced before, white kids, black kids, Hispanic kids, Asian kids. It was a melting pot of a team, black kids. And we put that team together, and they were 13 laps down in 2006. Well, basically the same group. Now, a year later, because that was the year I was banned, so I really didn't get a chance to work with them. But then a year later, I got a chance to work with them and instill some confidence in them. And we were in a 5-team field sprint. We finished 5th in there, but oh my God, this is the same group of dudes. And now all of a sudden, the next year, the same group of guys, we finished 2nd. So just seeing that confidence, just like, oh my God, that was a cool thing. Seeing like Theta Phi Alpha, the first team I trained, I didn't know I was going to do this when I opened my big mouth about, I was going to train them, but they trained 6 weeks for the race and they finished 14th, which I thought was incredible. You know what I mean? They killed themselves though. And then, after usually not finishing that well, now all of a sudden you've got 22 girls from Theta Phi Alpha signed up for the bike team in the fall. 22, and that team was it was amazing. So just inspiring people to do that, inspiring kids from Delta Tau Delta to do it, inspiring kids to come out to the race, African American students to come out to the race just to support teams was amazing. Just, being able to inspire people was a cool thing for sure.
Now, tell me a little bit about your hiatus. There's always in the history of Little Five, there'd be rumors that, that team has a ringer, somebody that has, a professional,
Sure.
A little higher category of riding. There were some particular circumstances with how that came about with, I guess, the suspension that you had. How did it happen? How did it go down? How did you get back into good graces?
I always say this. I never got back into good graces, but I will always say this. I will say that, sometimes you can transition from infamy, I could say. But, ultimately, when we put that team together in 92, we were terrible, but there was a 10-year lag, and the university came to us and people from the university came to us and said, hey, we'd like to get another black team in the race because the university's taking heat for why are we funding this event that only represents one demographic of students, and they're getting heat for it. So they're like, hey, we need Courtney Bishop back here, and I know what I was thinking. What I was thinking is I tell this story all the time, and for anyone paying attention, my story never changes. Not one iota of it is ever going to change because it is what happened. We got called back, in 2001, and they were like, hey, yeah, I'll come back and I'll put a team in the race, but if I'm going to put a team in the race, I'm going to do like what Fiji does and what Acacia does, and they go out and they recruit kids in high school, and that's what we need to do.
Sure, I've heard stories of this all the time.
I mean, that's what happened. That's the guys that were Acacia, they knew they were going to be in Acacia
from
when
the
they were
old
in high
stories
school.
of Delta Chi,
Delta Chi, yeah,
60s.
they find high school kids. This is what happens. And so what I did was I said, that's what we're going to do. And the vibe kind of was like, well, good luck with that, because we've traveled all over the country and I've never seen a black rider ever. So, and we started digging around, and sure enough, they're right. But after a couple of years of doing that and calling velodromes and calling race promoters, all of a sudden I started getting the same name. And that name was Josh Weir from Indianapolis. Well, the bad news is that, you're not going to find a lot of black cyclists. The good news is that if you do find one, he's going to know all the other black cyclists in the country, because they meet each other and they see each other at these races. They exchange phone numbers. So Josh Weir ended up knowing a kid. And granted, when I did this, I know nothing about cycling, nothing. I don't know how to coach cycling. I don't know what makes you fast. I just need black kids that ride bikes. Those are my two criteria. And I said to the university, I said, look, if I'm going to do this, you need to understand the kids I'm going to find aren't going to be from advantaged areas. And so I'm going to need to set up a 501c3 and fund scholarships for them to come here. And they were like, okay. So I set up a 501c3, sent them the IRS documents. We did promo videos, sent them the promo videos, and everyone thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And I think they thought it was the greatest thing in the world because they thought that they were going to get the same 1992, you're going to get lapped 20 times in the race team, and no one's going to notice. Well, what ended up happening was we damn near qualified on the pole, and that got everyone's attention. The way we qualified got everyone's attention. And now all of a sudden it was like, who the hell are these kids and how did they get here? And now when it comes time to answer the question about, hey, I'm saying, hey, the university knows we're here. They know about the scholarships. They know about, well, no one from the university is going to fess up to them amid all that scrutiny. So we just got kind of hung out to dry, and it's like no one knew anything about anything when we qualified second.
Were scholarships defunded? Or how?
No. And that was my point of contention, because from where I stood, and the guys know this, I'm like, look, I brought these kids here. The university knew they were coming here. And I was raising money to pay for tuitions, room and board, books, whatever they need, bikes, whatever they needed was being funded. And what I told them was, look, now that you've changed your mind and you think it's not a good idea, it's too late. It doesn't matter because these kids are already here and we are not leaving. And if you want to disavow knowledge of our existence, well, that's great. But now I dig in because I am not letting them go home. I'm not letting kids that I brought to Indiana University go back to South Central Los Angeles or Trinidad and Tobago or some of the worst areas in Philadelphia because you changed your mind. Not doing it. Not on my watch. And so I dug in and I said, I'm going to fight this tooth and nail. And that's what I did.
Were you able to court companies like Nike because they want a good story of, going from
I think it was a great story.
Yeah. Kids to
I think it was a great story, and we were really good. We were really good, and so we ended up getting sponsored. We're I say this, but the two teams that Nike sponsored, right, were Lance Armstrong's Discovery Channel team and Team Major Taylor in Bloomington, Indiana.
Isn't that something? Yeah.
Yep.
That is interesting. Yeah.
And so that was it. We had a clothing line with Nike for some time that was shoes. If you Google Nike Major Taylor, there are the shoes. We had a bike made for us. Nike had a relationship with Trek. Trek funded all our bikes, so they sent us 20 Madones a year and 20 single speed racers a year. And I mean, we were heavily funded. Yeah, and that ticked people off, and it is what it is. But the end of my motivating factor was, we need these things because the more money that I don't have to spend on equipment is the more money I can use to pay for their tuitions. And so that's what I did. And so now it's coming out that, oh yeah, they're paying for tuitions. And I'm like, yeah, because that's what we were told we could do. And you can't, pull the plug on it once they're there. And so the reaction was, well, then we'll just ban you for life. And so that's what they did. They banned me for life. And so it was interesting.
And then you get back into it. And how
Yeah,
and how did
I
that come about?
well, it didn't come about the way that was reported through the benevolence of people's benevolence. It did come about because it's like creating a diamond. All you need is a little bit of time and a lot of pressure. And without getting too much into that story, they got a lot of pressure to get me back in the race, and so they acquiesced to that.
So tell me about the pinnacle on the crown. Now that we've got the jewels and analogy, I
Um,
guess you finally
just
had an ultimate race. Tell us about it, Coach.
Yeah, we had an ultimate race we had a lot of ultimate race with Team Major Taylor, and my goal was that people would never ever again say that it's impossible to field a black team. A black team will never win, and we didn't win, but people knew darn well that it was possible. You know what I mean? Because we came so close. I mean, we finished third 3 times with Major Taylor, or second. I mean, sorry, 3 times with Major Taylor. We were in the top 5 every year except one. I mean, I'm sorry, every year except 2. Our first year and in 2006, and so it just people knew that we could pull it off. And then when the team disbanded, and I disbanded the team because it was really expensive. I think I ended up putting in like $350,000 of my own money, and the whole project cost about $1 million.
Wow.
You think 8 kids, you think about it, 8 kids at Indiana University for the better part of 5 years, 2 runs, it's about $1 million, right? And so, we raised that money, we funded the whole thing, but when it was done because I just didn't have that much energy. And so, Delta Tau Delta, I ended up coaching the last year of Major Taylor and the first year of Delta Tau Delta in the same race. And Delta Tau Delta finished second, and Major Taylor finished fourth. So I coached 2 teams in one race, second and fourth, pretty cool. And then I was with Delts the following.
Has that ever been done?
I don't think that's ever been done. Yeah, we ended up qualifying like I want to say 4th and 5th, and so we got to pick our pits, bam, bam, and we said, hey, let's just pit next to each other. I'll stand in the middle. I'll coach both teams, and that's what I did.
So you literally would kind of just go back and forth depending on the situation.
Yep, back and forth. We kind of work together sometimes, and I say to this day, if we didn't get a pedal clipped with Major Taylor wins that race. If Matt Niebler from Delta Tau Delta realizes that he's on the last lap when he was on the last lap, we would have won that race. So we had 2 chances to win. It just didn't happen. But then, Delta Tau Delta moved forward. We finished 4th and 4th, and then we had our breakthrough year with RJ Stewart, playing chess. That was my first chess match race that we won in 2012 because that was a cerebral win. We just managed the race, and we outthought everyone that day.
You play chess?
I play chess with little 5 bites, but that's about it. But I guess I think of the race in chess terms. I guess you're literally trying to protect your queen at all times. Well, your queen is your sprint, right? You're trying to sacrifice your pawns. Well, your pawn is the number 4 guy on your team, and you're trying to make the other team give up their king, trying to attack your pawn, which is basically our number 4 guy, exhausting everyone else's number 1 guy.
That's a great analogy. I love it.
Yeah.
So many other things I could ask you, but here's what I'm going to ask you. Let's take it to you finish up, you decide that you're gonna change into run coaching for a bit. How does that come about?
I had a good friend of mine. Her name was Dee Dee Nathan, that was the coach at Pike High School, and She asked me if I wanted to come out and be the head coach at Pike. We discussed that for a while, and I said, I just couldn't do that. There's so much time. I'm working. I'm working. I coach Little Five still. I said, but I got a couple days a week that I could maybe come out. And Pike's a sprint school, bar none. And but they wanted me to coach the distance girls, and I'm like, they're like, hey, we got these girls that are running around. We don't really know what they do, but they're running through neighborhoods, and we need someone to watch them. And I said, hey, if I'm going to come out and watch them, I'm coaching. That's what I do. And so, as luck would have it, or whatever you might say, the first girl that I met was first girl that I met had been homeschooled, and she comes out as a senior. She says she wants to run track, and she wants to run, just so she can say she did something in high school, and she wants to run the 100 and long jump. And I ended up convincing her that I just think you're an 800-meter runner. And truth be told, I'd probably say that to anybody. But so after a week, I kind of convinced her that, hey, you're an 800-meter runner. And I start training her, and she doesn't know any better. So I just train her in the way that I was trained. And the first 800 that she runs in high school, she runs 2:11.77, right? And she ends up running 2:06.62 at the state meet, which is the all-time the fastest 800 in the history of Indiana. Her name was Elizabeth Stanhope. She's at Indiana now, as a matter of fact, on scholarship. And, people thought that, hey, we put together a team that summer that ran 8:46, which was U.S. #1 in the 4x8. And then my second year, she had graduated, and people were like, oh, it was kind of a fluke. Well, then the second year I coached girls that ran 2:07, 2:08, and 2:09. And we were U.S. #1 in the 4x8. And then my phone started ringing about my girls. But then we were U.S. #1 again in the 4x8. And so people were asking me, well, how are you training these girls? Because, they're saying that, none of them ran the 800 before they met you. So what are you doing? And so that conversation started. And then, all of a sudden I started getting these offers from Division I schools to coach track. I got a call from, interest from Georgetown, Kansas State, Indiana State, and Nebraska. And Nebraska wanted me to coach there. They gave me carte blanche control over their middle distance program for men and women. And I decided, hey, I got to see what that's about. So I went out to Nebraska to coach the Cornhuskers.
And so I guess what was your secret sauce then? What was your big thing with how you became sort of this 800-meter middle distance specialist? Motivation? Was it sets? What was your secret sauce?
It's a lot of, it's just, I don't know. I kind of have always kind of developed over time, back in my Acacia Pledge trainer days, the ability to kind of push people, maybe more than they think they can be pushed, and that with, what I learned from Coach Bell, and then this one philosophy that I had that, most of the girls, especially on the girl side, most of the people that run the 800 historically are your cross country girls that move down, that run the 800 because it's short for them, well, I never thought any of them were fast enough. So I looked for 100-meter dash runners that I could talk into moving up. And they all thought I was out of my mind. But Elizabeth Stanhope runs 2:05.5, and she comes through the 800 at the state meet in 59, or her first lap at the state meet was 59.9 for 400 meters because she's fast. And so I just took fast girls, and instead of them running the 100, they ran the 800, and it just worked out.
Now you end up just recently, word gets around that you've got some coaching experience with middle distance, and you coached a national high school champion that we both know here in the DC metro area. That was you gave some sets indirectly.
Yeah. I didn't coach her directly, but
indirectly.
I'd gotten with Paul Whitaker, and Paul and I kind of collaborated on just kind of bounce ideas off each other. And he was actually, I did the Indiana State coaches clinic for 800 meters, and Paul was in that group also. But just Juliet was, I think she ended up running 1:58 this year as a high school senior, which is just, lights out. I think she was the national record holder at 800 meters, as a matter of fact, at one point. It might have gotten broken by Rasheen Willis, but it's just incredible. just incredible. But I like collaborating with people, and like Paul's been someone that I really respect and love bouncing ideas off of, and trying to come up with stuff. And so it's really neat having like any involvement with that.
Tell me where we are in American sports with diversity. What do you think? Obviously, you've been part of some collegiate accomplishments. You've seen a lot in the years that you've competed and coached. Uh, where do we still need to go? What hasn't happened?
Um, I just think, and I've always had this this idea, um, that just like things with Major Taylor, made that team sparked like just this national movement. There were 4 or 5 like Major Taylor clubs in the U.S. Then this huge article comes out in Bicycling Magazine about this little group of guys sponsored by Nike in Bloomington, Indiana. And you fast forward, even though people don't even really understand the synergies of it, now there are like 50 Major Taylor cycling clubs throughout the country. 50, they're everywhere. Major Taylor's on a Hennessy commercial during NBA games, and and the fastest criterium cyclists in the country are a bunch of black guys from LA, the Williams brothers and Legion Cycling. And Justin Williams was in that group, from Major Motion in LA that sparked, that group from Bloomington had a major impact moving forward on the national landscape of cycling. People, I think that's been lost in translation, but that's the reality of it. Trademarking Major Taylor sparked some things, but the reality of it is, I think the gist of it is, the more things that you can get people involved in, the more it's going to change everything. My dream, which I don't ever see happening, would be to start an academy for minority kids to get them involved in non-traditional sports. Like the crazy thing, could you field a black hockey team and then be really good? I 100% guarantee it if you could get them all in the same place and they live there. Or a black rugby team,
Downhill
100%.
skiing.
Downhill skiing, just I got a girl on the national, Kyle Plant, got an athlete that I worked with on the U.S. Olympic bobsled team, or U.S. Olympic Team USA for bobsled. She didn't compete in the Olympics, but she was in the Olympic development program. If you can just introduce people to things, the results would be amazing, and kind of get them out of their environments, which is where this boarding school idea came from. Almost like Culver for minority kids to compete in non-traditional sports would change the world. But pipe dream.
Now, take us to where you are today. What sort of career have you gotten yourself into now?
I came back from Nebraska. I work for a company called Zimmer Biomet. I am a medical device sales rep, orthopedic medical device sales representative. Loving it, learning a lot, drinking water from a fire hose, learning. But I'm in surgery most days. Working with my group and my team, and just really enjoying it, and tremendously thankful for the opportunity.
I do want to share something, because I do know something about another department, not necessarily the line that you do, but Zimmer Biomet is very instrumental with bone stimulators and electromagnetic waves that help with bone healing. So not long ago, I had a guest. He is Ted Forkham, who is Cairo that does USA Track and Field, and he started talking to me about electromagnetics for recovery for track and field athletes. So USA Track and Field actually has lower level units that they use because they're easy to transport.
Sure.
But that stimulated my thought, and I've used bone stimulators for delayed unions. I'm a podiatrist. And now, just recently, I bought a Korean unit that I had shipped over from Korea. And it is being used for muscle recovery, tendon injuries, stress fractures, etc. So it's really fascinating. I mean, for years, it's been used by NASA, the technology for weightlessness, etc. But now it's an exciting technology. Let me
No,
finish
that's awesome.
Yeah, let me finish with, what do you do to stay healthy? I always like to ask my guests what they're doing now to stay healthy.
It's funny. I went out to Nebraska, and most of the videos that you see of me in Little Five, I'm being honest. I was a miler in college. I don't think I was ever over 148 pounds in college. And then, somehow, as fate would have it, I think I put on a lot of weight, and I ended up being like, I think when I left for Nebraska, I was 245 pounds, and when I came back from Nebraska, I was 165 pounds
Holy
in
smokes.
about 8 months. And so I've kind of maintained that now. And
You're like the reverse Jake LaMotta from Raging Bull.
yeah.
God.
So I'm actually contemplating competing in Masters track this year. So
Oh, that is awesome.
that's
That is
that's my
awesome.
thing.
Well,
So
listen, Courtney Bishop, you've been an exciting guest. It seems like your career has never been a dull moment.
never a dull moment.
It's
5 lifetimes I've lived.
it's been a great interview. I wish you the best. Maybe in 5 years or so, we'll see how Masters track, or maybe 4. Maybe we won't wait that long. We'll wait 2 or 3, 4 years. What the
And
heck?
there you go.
I'd love to hear your story about Masters track, because that's great. You're always finding something new to do. Any
Yeah.
last words you want to leave us with?
Well, I want to thank you for the opportunity and having me on. I think definitely keep pushing to challenge things. That's kind of something that I've has been a big driver for me through my life. And hey, if you're gonna take on the world, make sure you scorch the earth behind you, baby. You know what I mean?
I love it. I love it. Well, listen, from one luminary who did some interesting things in cycling to another, I'm going to complete next time on Fitfoot You another cycling story. Eddie Van Gys is going to be talking to me about 2 of the greatest cyclists pro of all time. One a Belgian, Eddie Merckx, and one an American, Greg LeMond. And he's going to talk to, he both had a chance to meet them both personally and share some stories. And Courtney Bishop, you've been such a generous guest with your time and stories. Thank you again. This is Dr. Ben Pearl with Fitfoot You.
Thanks, Dr. Burrow.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye now.